years on the raw foods, 71, Graham.
The average person lives less time than the average vegetarian. The average vegetarian lives a shorter life than the average vegan. Well, if we're not supposed to do blood work, how do I do before and after?
In that theory, the fact that we ate cooked food is what helped our brain to develop. What do you think of it? Hi, and welcome to a truly exceptional episode today because Doug Graham is back on the Light Leaders podcast, but this time in flesh with me here in Bali, and we'll talk about him as a teacher, but also as an embodiment of health. So as a recap, Doug, you've been coaching for over 55 years now in health and fitness. You've coached over 10,000 people. You're now 71, and I was seeing you doing pull-ups just before, so you're an embodiment of that health. You've been on the raw vegan path for over 45 years,
Yes.
I believe, and you're the author of the 80-10-10 diet, which to me is kind of the Bible of being a raw vegan. So super excited to have you today, and we're going to talk about longevity. We're going to talk about health span, being healthy, and so you've coached a lot of people doing that, and you're doing that yourself. We'll talk also about leadership and leaving a legacy, because I believe you've paved the way for that raw vegan way. Also, we've done a couple of episodes already, so if you look on my channel, or the viewer, you can look at a more introductory podcast that we did together, which was more on the food, like should I get B12 supplement and is quinoa fine? I don't know
The details.
all of that, but it was more the basics of thriving as an athlete on a raw vegan diet. And you have the book, the 80-10-10, that goes into all of this. So today, you're here with me in Bali. We won't go into these little details. We'll have more of a discussion around the principles of it and the results that you've gotten with it. Before we dive into that, what are you grateful for today, Doug?
Well, I'm grateful to be here in Bali. I promise you, I'm grateful to be here in Bali. I'm grateful to have lived a life of fantastic health. I'm grateful to have a loving wife and a beautiful, intelligent, talented daughter. And I'm grateful. It's a little cliche, they say, I'm truly grateful even to be able to express that I'm grateful. For me, being able to convey my thoughts to others is incredibly powerful. So I speak from my heart, and being able to do that with clarity is something that I've really gained through my raw food journey. That ability was very suppressed and somewhat forgotten on a cooked food diet. So the ability to be more clear and to express myself well, this is one of the most powerful things that I'm grateful for.
Thank you, Doug. And so we'll talk about the physical aspect of being more athletic and how the raw vegan diet can help with that. But my understanding is helped you a lot with clarity and expressing your thoughts clearly.
Yes. My ability to learn, my ability to recall, my ability to be accurate. Used to be a very accident-prone person. Used to be a person who would forget words. Just, I knew the word, but I just couldn't quite. Or when conversations fragment, they kind of, you wander off down here for a while, and then you wander off down here, and then over here, and then you look the other person in the eye, or I would look the other person in the eye and go, what were we talking about? And neither of us could remember. And I went to raw food diet, all of a sudden I could remember. And I could go, oh, well, we were talking, like now, we were talking about what am I grateful for?
Yeah.
And I could go back. Go, I know what I'm talking about, even though we've wandered and wandered and wandered. Ah, yes, let's go back to the main point. So the clarity was so huge to wake up with a clear mind and to have that all day long and to be functional and valuable to others throughout. Really don't have those moments of those moments don't happen, you know. And so my daughter is 19 and she expects me to be able to do everything with her, and so do I expect to be able to do everything with her. And on his 80th birthday, some more than about 40 years ago, I called a gentleman named Jack LaLanne. Jack LaLanne is one of the giants of the fitness industry upon whose shoulders I'm standing. And I had the pleasure to talk to him as he went through his senior years. And I called him up on his 80th and asked him how it felt to be 80. And he read me the riot act. I mean, he almost started yelling and screaming. 80 is no different than 60 or 40 or 20. I feel the same. I am me. I have no age. It's just the physical body, and my physical body is fine. So 80 feels just like any other age, you know. And it's just, and now I'm feeling the same way. You know, my age isn't the important thing. How I feel is the important thing, and I feel great.
That's amazing. And at the same time, some people can't help but thinking, oh wow, you're also doing amazing for your age, right? And I love that you add that, because with this, when people age, they want to still be strong and go for walks and even do pull-ups like you do, but also want to think clearly. That's a big thing too. Yeah.
For me, the thinking, my body is important. I work with my body. Currently, I'm the national champion in powerlifting in my age and weight in all of the United Kingdom. So in June, I get to go defend my title. And it's important for me to be able to play, to run, to swim, to lift, to function, to be able to do. I was up on a ladder a few days ago, and I was well up on a ladder, and my neighbor came from across the street and said, "Oh, I saw you up on the ladder. It looks dangerous. Do you want me to hold the ladder?" And no, I'm perfectly fine. I would, you know, to be able to be fully functional is really important. I watch in my practice. I watch a lot of people who are, the expression is that they're going out in parts, you know, and you lose a little of this and you lose a little of that, and you just accept it. And I'm going, no, I really prefer fully functional. If I have my choice and I have my choice, I'll take fully functional every time. So I'm glad everything works, and I know that as long as I continue to provide the appropriate conditions, my body knows what to do. My body works perfectly. It knows what to do and always has from the time of inception. And like a plant, if we provide what the plant needs, it thrives. If we give it anything else, symptoms. So if we provide what a child needs, it thrives. We nurture the child into health. My philosophy is adults need adult-sized portions of nurturing. And I'm all in favor of giving myself everything I need. They are an eyeful. I first tasted the equivalent of dragon fruit on a trip to Israel. they eat a cactus fruit called sabra. And I was eating the cactus fruit going, for some reason, this is extremely satisfying. And I couldn't put my finger on why it was so satisfying, but it was really satisfying. Then I was in the desert in Arizona, and there's a cactus in Arizona called saguaro. Everyone knows the saguaro cactus. It's the one that looks like this. And they sometimes put a sombrero on it, and that makes a fruit which is much like the dragon fruit, but a quarter the size. But it falls to the ground off of the cactus. When it falls to the ground on the desert floor, in one day, it is now dehydrated saguaro fruit. Apparently, the Indians of that area, or the natives from that area, lived primarily on that fruit through most of the food off season, as it were, because in a day on the desert floor it would dry, and then you could store it for months and months. So I ate that, and once again it was like, for some reason this is really satisfying food. So when I finally first tried dragon fruit, and I go, this is the embodiment of very satisfying.
Yeah, we're very blessed to have these as usual fruit in Bali. And so going into your ability athletically or cognitively, how much do you attribute that to eating a raw vegan diet? And I know it's quite a bit. And also, like, why? Why do you think that works out well?
Okay. Compared to the average person, compared to myself on a cooked food diet, I need less sleep, about 2 hours per day, less sleep.
How much do you sleep?
About 7 hours.
Okay.
I'd say is an average. But I can function on less, which is something I learned in medical school. Going through that training, I learned if you have to function on no sleep, then you do. There's tricks you can call upon, for a while. But eventually Mother Nature prevails. I need less sleep, and I became, as I mentioned, more coordinated. So for me, the coordination isn't just, I can do tricks or something, physical coordination, which meant I became less accident prone, which was fantastic for me because I have a history of accidents. But the coordination happens in my brain for all of my mental faculties. As a child, I had a terrible time trying to learn foreign language or memorizing things, or really even remembering, as I say, what we were talking about. Within meals of switching to 100% raw, I was unleashed. I was unchained. It was.
Do you know why?
Yes, I do know why. But this science, to be able to express the, as my teacher was named, Joe Toth, he used to use the word terminology. So, which I always found funny. For me, it's terminology, but he always said terminology, and to be able to express this has been a life's journey. It's really been a life's work to come up with the rationale behind. Everyone, I believe, everyone went through even a little bit of school, or even without going to school, were told by adults, eat fruits and vegetables, they're good for you. We know this. I went through enough school and then did enough research and eventually found why. Because that's the way I function, is I like to know why. And I learned two things, basically. One, fruits and vegetables provide everything we need without providing things we don't need or we would do better to avoid. And two, when we cook food, we cook in factors that are harmful to us. And I can name the factors. There's what are called the five gens, which are the origins. Gens are the origins of things. So carcinogen is the origins of cancer, and tumorigens, the origin of tumors, and tremorogens, the origin of tremors. Mutagens are the origins of mutations, the aging process itself. And then we have teratogens, which infer to creating problems into future generations. This in addition to things such as anti-nutrients and antivitamins that are also cooked in factors. So we cook in problems, we add problems when we heat food. Yes, the degree of heat matters, and the length of time that we heat matters, but it's there every single time we produce what are known as AGEs, and the AGEs contain all the gens. So when we remove those anti-health factors and add in all of the missing pieces, it's sort of like after a winter in Europe, how wonderful the sun feels. They were just looking for it. Oh, I can feel a little warmth from the sun. Oh, it feels so good. By the end of a long summer, most Europeans are avoiding the sun by September. They're going, I've had enough sun, you know. And then this whole long winter comes and we repeat the cycle with raw foods. We start filling what are known as nutritional bankruptcy areas. Many of the substances that are commonly sold as supplements in health food stores are already in the raw fruits and vegetables that a raw fooder will eat. So nutritional bankruptcies began to be filled, and then what's called first line and second line interactions started to come into balance. So the average nutrient on a first line of interactions interacts with at least 8 other nutrients. If we look at your calcium level, that's important to know. But it's more relevant to know calcium to magnesium or calcium to phosphorus or any of those first line of interacting substances, each of which has another line, 8 each. So the second line is 64 things, which is why I get a little concerned when people say, oh, I took B12 or I took this, took B6. And I go, but the bees rely on all the bees in their very first layer. So when you take B6, you throw out the ratio of B6 to all the others. And although, yes, you may be giving yourself more B6, but the interactions and the way those things are going to work in your body, the ratios, you're actually creating more problem than you're solving.
Yeah, I think that's why I hear you, and I'm generally a little bit reluctant to take isolate supplements or even taking the blood test like to exactly I should be this level and that's the average. Do I really want to be in the average anyway?
No, you don't want to be in the average for most things.
Yeah, that's why I like to go nature's way.
The average is determined by testing the average people.
Yeah.
I'm not striving for my blood work to come out the same as an average person. They're eating quite differently from me. They're living quite differently from me, smoking and drinking and many other habits they're watching the news, blood, murder, stabbing, rape, violence, fire, flood, famine, and horror every single day. And every cell of your body, I credit my wife Rosalind with this comment, but every cell of your body is eavesdropping on your thoughts. So whatever's coming in through your thoughts, your body knows. If there's a stone in your shoe, every cell of your body knows. It's not just your sole of your foot. And reacts accordingly. A scientist, a biologist by the name of Bruce Lipton, whom you're familiar with, says that those very thoughts affect your genetic sequences, and your gene options can switch on or off.
Yeah, that's the science of epigenetics.
Okay, can and are affected by your thought process and the way you live and every bite of food, and so this byplay starts to become more important, which is why I was saying I use the phrase coordination. Things started to become much more coordinated. This allows for what many people call these days flow, to be in the flow and stay in that flow.
Thank you. I love that you bring that, actually, because I'm also loving the work of people like Bruce Lipton or even Joe Dispenza. And I find that sometimes in the raw food movement or any nutrition movement, there is so much emphasis on the physical that we can forget a little bit how much the mind, our thoughts, and our fears also
the metaphysical, right? So we have the physical and the metaphysical. We have to respect.
Yeah. And that's like an entire conversation that we may go towards, but also to look at the health and longevity when we're talking about those isolated supplements. I'm curious if you followed the work of a guy called Brian Johnson.
No, I haven't followed him.
Okay. He's an interesting guy who's testing on himself, doing a lot of scientific experiments.
I'm familiar with what he's done, yes.
Yeah. And so he has all like tracking all his organ and all those measures. He actually ends up on a vegan diet, but not raw, and also with a lot of supplements. It seems to work pretty well so far. I like his approach.
So I'll say two things. One, I do not believe in biohack.
Yeah.
So I'm not looking to biohack. I'm simply going to provide the conditions. It's a longer phrase. I use the word conditions. It's really substances, forces, influences, and conditions for which humans are designed. So if we respect that design, we give them what they need, humans will thrive. But you brought up twice the idea of isolated nutrients. And people in general are familiar with the phrase that is called empty calories. These are calories without or separated from their associated nutrients, the nutrients where we would normally find these calories. And these are empty calories. We understand that this is health detriment to consume empty calories. In the exact same way, you can have nutrients without calories, or nutrients separated from their associated nutrients in the form of supplementation. And these I refer to as empty nutrients. And the empty nutrients are easily as empty or harmful as the empty calories.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I like that he's sharing everything he's doing publicly. And I'll just say it's going to be interesting to see how it unfolds for him.
Ronnie Smith, in a presentation at the opening of this year's UK Fruit Fest, talked about evidence. Is there any evidence for a raw food diet? He had recently had a conversation with another doctor who was very pro raw food for a while and now is promoting more cooked food. And they were having a conversation, and she said that there's no evidence for a raw food diet, which set him thinking. And he got back to her and gave in his presentation the idea that does 500 million years count as evidence? The fact that every creature on planet Earth has lived 100% exclusively on a raw food diet for 500 million years. Does this not give us some evidence? For me, I think, yes, it does. I think it's very powerful evidence. I would say that the cooked food experiment has been performed. It's run its course, and we've discovered that cooked food is not a healthy option. In the same way that we discovered, say, the smoking experiment has run its course, we've discovered smoking is not a healthy option. The high-fat diet has run its course. We've discovered that high-fat diet is not a healthy option. And the war on drugs has run its course. The war on drugs has completely run its course. The drugs won. The drugs won. At this point, drugs are everywhere.
And it's interesting when you share about, like, it's very common in the raw food movement. We talk about, well, every animal, they eat raw and they have the species-specific diet. Why would humans be different, right? A friend of mine told me of a gentleman that I know, actually, thanks to his books on psychedelics. He's called Michael Pollan. He also did apparently a documentary I haven't seen on Netflix, but called Cooked. I think there's a book with it. And my understanding from what that person told me was that the theory was, well, we actually, as humans, in many ways, are more developed than animals. And I think in that theory, the fact that we ate cooked food is what helped our brain to develop. So I don't know if you've heard of the theory.
Sure, of course.
What do you think of it?
Several biologists looked at this quite some time ago. It's not a new idea. And theorized two things. What they found was that amongst mammals, there is a hierarchy of food consumption. In the anthropoids, which are monkeys that don't have tails, in the monkeys, and in the next layer down, creatures that are fairly intelligent and agile, such as a raccoon or a lemur or pesote, that the smarter the animal within their class, the smarter the animal, as the intelligence went up, so did the consumption of fruit. Amongst the monkeys, the smarter monkeys eat more fruit, the less intelligent monkeys eat more leaves. And we see this in the anthropoid apes as well. What you might think of as the great apes, okay? That if we arrange them in order of intelligence, as the intelligence goes up, so does their fruit consumption as a ratio of total calories. We at least like to think that we're at the top of that pile. If we arrange the same group by order of genetic similarity to us, the order remains the same as if we arrange them by intelligence. So if all assumptions would lead to the conclusion that we are, as human beings, we are designed to eat more fruit than the other anthropoids that already eat huge amounts of fruit. We're designed to eat even more. So the biologist said, okay, we're smart, we've got bigger brain. How did this happen? It either happened one of two ways. One of two things happened. Either eating fruit made us smarter, or having to eat fruit and all of the information that we need to process in order to find fruit made us smarter. We have to keep track of more things. People in the jungle who have to, or animals in the jungle that have to find leaves, don't need to do a lot of work. Leaves are everywhere. But finding fruit in season, finding fruit that other creatures aren't going to harm you if you try to eat their fruit, eating fruit that isn't going to make you sick and fall out of the trees or die, this requires the processing of tremendous amounts of information. Where was that tree that had that great fruit last year? We've got to find that one tree again this year. I mean, it's a lot. So they theorize, well, if you keep asking people to learn things, they get smarter. Okay, so both of those theories happened. And then Richard Leakey, who comes from a family of anthropologists, the Leakey, his parents were like the most famous anthropologists in the world for a long time. Well, Richard is the son, and he also became an anthropologist. Kind of gave him an unfair advantage, and he really knows his stuff, and he's very well connected. So he wrote a book called The Origins of Humankind. And in this book, he mostly gave other people's opinions, usually consensus opinions. The consensus among anthropologists is that this happened. Man had a small brain and the brain got bigger. And the way it happened was by finding, we've always had the potential to have this bigger brain, but couldn't tap into it because we had insufficient fuel, basically insufficient fuel. Once we found a source of greater fuel, or if you will, more dense calorie source, brain development happened automatically. So the same thing can be shown in animals in the wild. Black bears in the middle of the United States do fine, but those same black bears living on the coast, the west coast of the United States, are huge because at least once a year they have access to unlimited salmon. For a good long while, they have unlimited calorie source, and they've just got bigger as a result. We see this in many populations. There are, on the east coast of the United States, in areas where food is abundant, there's an animal called a white-tailed deer. It's a big, impressive creature. And in the Florida Keys, there are also white-tailed deer called key deer. Scientists thought they were a different species. But when they finally got close enough and did some genetic testing, found out that the Florida key deer are the same white-tailed deer as you find anywhere else, with access to much less food. And so they become a miniature version of the white-tailed deer of Virginia. So we see the same thing happen in humans. The Aztecs, the Incas, they could survive relatively limited food. And these were people who matured at 4.5 feet tall. I mean, really small. We've seen it in cultures around the world that when Western influences or other influences come in to provide, or that end up providing, a greater calorie source, the population gets bigger. Some people say, "Oh, yes, it's hormones," but it's not. It's not just about hormones. Sometimes it's simply calories. So, the anthropologists suggested denser calorie source allowed humans to reach a fuller potential, which included brain expansion, especially frontal portion of the brain. Among all of those anthropologists, 0 suggested meat consumption did it. 0 suggested cooked food did it. And 0 suggested it was fruit, which runs about 10 times the calorie density of leaves. So, which one it was? I'm going to go with fruit, since fruit was readily available. Cooking, for a society to start cooking everything in order to become smarter, how did they get smart enough to start cooking? I mean, it doesn't really hold water, I don't think, and it wouldn't have created this sudden change that we started eating animals. Again, this is exceptionally dangerous behavior. I mean, sneaking up on a dragon fruit is dangerous enough. You know, there's thorns to be considered. Sneaking up on a papaya, I can do that. I believe if I try to capture an animal, I will die from infection. Even a squirrel or some tiny animal, you try to catch an animal and they scratch you, you will die of infection. I'm going to go with fruit consumption. There are nowadays biologists who agree with me and say their theory is the dense calorie source that humans discovered was fruit, which I find interesting. I was in the jungle in Costa Rica leading a bunch of pre-med students to go monkey watching. So every morning before dawn, we'd go off and I would take them to a place where I was pretty sure the monkeys had gone to sleep the night before, so they should still be there. And we watched capuchin monkeys, which are known as the white-faced monkeys, and we watched black-faced monkeys, the howler monkeys that make the loudest sound on land of any animal in the world, and we watched them. And we'd sit there and sit for hours and sometimes eat some food. Well, the howlers would watch us and continue munching their leaves. And when we left, even if we left food, they did not come down to find out what that food was. When we watched capuchin monkeys, a much smarter monkey, very curious, I wasn't sure if we were watching them or they were watching us. But if we left, they'd watch us eat. And then if we put down any food, when we left and it was safe, they'd come right down, go check out and see if it was food for them or not. If we left fruit, they'd eat it. If it wasn't monkey food, they wouldn't eat it. But it was fascinating that just by looking, they could see, that's food, let's try it. So there are other animals that can do that. Certainly my dogs are smart enough to know if they see me eating, it might be food for them. My hypothesis is we were already eating leaves. We discovered the fruit. The latent brain development happened automatically. the anthropologists, all they said was denser calorie source.
There's an interesting book on this also I read called Return to the Brain of Eden by Tony Wright.
Yes, yes.
Do you know what?
Tony's a smart man. I've gotten to spend a lot of time with him. He's a very smart man.
Nice. Yeah, and I don't know exactly what Michael Pollan's point was on what made the brain go bigger. So
it wasn't fruit. Yeah. A lot of people want to support the idea that cooked food made us smarter. I'm going, well, if cooked food made us smarter, then now we're eating a lot of cooked food. Shouldn't we still be getting smarter? Overall, human beings are not growing smarter. What happened? How come the cooked food magic stopped working?
Yeah, true. And we're also cooking our food now, but also having it super heavily processed, right? So I guess someone could make an argument again, like about that. And actually, that ties into another thing where that ties into the health and longevity and the potential of cooked food versus raw foods is the blue zone aspect, right? Which is so blue zones are those areas where there's the most centenarians. And when I looked at the documentary on it, it looks like it's a lot of things like sweet potatoes and beans, sometimes even olive oils, generally pretty vegan. But generally pretty cooked too, but more clean. So then there could be a case where, optimal is a lot of cooked food, but clean. And now it's not going so well because we have a lot of processed shit.
Well, anytime we remove processed food from our lifestyle, from our food style, if you will, there will be a general improvement in health every time. So we remove refined foods, we see an improvement. I find it interesting, just for the sake of it, but I'll go back to the longevity, is there's a current rage called ketosis diet. And knowing enough about terminology helps. In medical terminology, the suffix osis means two things. It means abnormal and unsustainable.
To be totally fair, though, I think usually people use ketogenic diet, right?
Nowadays, but it's called the ketosis diet.
But you go into ketosis.
It's sort of like we say plant-based. They used to say something else and say something else, and the words keep changing.
But they say they plan to go into ketosis when they do.
They plan to go into ketosis. The point of ketogenic diet, we're back to gen, which I was talking about before, right? Gen is the origin of keto. So it's ketogenic. It's IC means pertaining to the origins of keto. So the ketosis diet, osis means abnormal, unsustainable. Those are the two words if we check in dictionary. So
it is branded as a biohack. Like you go into
this, we're back to biohack.
Use the ketones for energy.
Okay, so I'm not going in that direction. I'm going in the direction of let's improve lifestyle, improve health. The result being the same as nurturing any other plant. If we take great care of a plant, it will reach its maximum potential, whatever the plant is. Whether it's a giant redwood, or this is white orchids. Yeah, this orchid is just spectacular. I was looking at orchids actually earlier this morning, growing on a tree right outside my front door, and I've always been a fan of orchids. I'm quite impressed by orchids, especially when I was a kid, and I learned, because I like the flavor vanilla, to learn that the vanilla bean is the only edible portion of any orchid. I think that's one thing. Apparently, we've tried every bit, and the part that's edible is the vanilla bean. Why? I don't know. So, my understanding is that we can look at performance from various angles. What most people do that I've seen has been, let's look at blood work. What's the blood work say? Over these last 40 years, many people have come and say, okay, I'm going to switch my diet and I'm going to chronicle everything. Which blood work, which markers should I really keep track of? I want to do before and after for 30 days or 90 days or whatever the period of time is. And I want to be able to show those markers. Which should they be? And I go, there aren't any blood markers that are really going to be a big deal. That is going to be so convincing that it's going to tell somebody anything. As I mentioned earlier, we do our blood averages based on typically somewhere between 10 and 100,000 people who visit doctors and get their blood work done, and then we come up with the average. Well, these are 10 to 100,000 people who are sick. Otherwise, they never would have went to a doctor. Healthy people don't go to doctors. Doctors don't have access to healthy people to even check 10,000 super healthy people and let's look at their blood work, let alone 10,000 vegans and check their blood work, because at that point, many of the key parameters change for a vegan. Some go up, some go down. And vegans call me all the time, say, I'm really worried about my blood work. It came out abnormal here. And I go, congratulations, that's good. You're lower than average. It's supposed to be. Or higher than average. It's supposed to be.
I actually had that with my count of white cells.
Yes, white cell count plummets.
Like my white count cell was below the average and the range, and then actually looked at Dr. Greger's work on it, and there's actually a stronger association with longevity when you have a lower white blood cell count. So my doctor was like, oh, that's a problem, you need to fix it. I was like, well, I don't think so. I think that's
so this is the point, is that yes, we could look at an individual parameter. What people ask me, they go, okay, well, if we're not supposed to do blood work, how do I do before and after? And I just, performance. Just show me your physical performance. Show me your mental performance. Try and memorize something, or play those little memory games, flip cards, whatever it is. There's lots of little memory games. Play a memory game before you start. Play the same memory game 30 days later after 30 days on Raw. Let's see what's happened to your concentration. Let's see what happens. What's your mile time? How fast can you run 1 kilometer, or how fast can you run a mile? Whatever type of training you do, show me where you're at now on your training, and show me where you are 30 days later on your physical training, mental training, emotional training, spiritual training. Come up with ways to measure and show me that. And I believe you will show me something far more powerful than you could ever demonstrate in blood work.
I love that. So let's do some tests for our viewers. I think physical, it's easy for people to come up with their tests, like running or how much you bench press, whatever. Mental, I like your idea of the game. How would you do for spiritual and emotional?
Spiritual might be keeping track of how much time you stay in the present. How much time do you speak in first person, and how much time do you slip into second or third person speech? Little things like that.
What do you mean by third person, second, third person speech?
When I say, when you go to the store and you buy certain things and then you realize you bought the wrong thing and you bring it back, well, that's all second person. I'm talking about you. How do I know that anything I'm saying is true? When I go to the store and I buy the wrong thing, okay, when I'm speaking of myself, I'm much more in the present.
Yeah.
And what's cool is what the other person hears. Because when I say, and when you do this, the other person hears the word you. When I say I, the other person hears I and thinks I.
Mm.
Whereas when they think you, they're reflecting it back on me. So it's, let alone we can go into they, and we go into third person.
Mm.
So staying present,
yeah.
and just tracking how much of the day are you present.
Mm.
Far easier to stay present on a raw food diet.
Mm.
The cooked food factors, many of the cooked food factors dumb us and dull us down to where we become emotionally numb.
Yeah.
And it's just harder. So you can keep track.
Yeah.
Minutes
do
per
believe,
day, minutes per hour.
I do believe eating a raw food diet is a spiritual practice in a way and an emotional practice, because it's not as good as numbing your emotion, for sure.
I mean, as I said the other day, the most spiritual experience I've ever had in my life was plucking a piece of fruit from a tree that I had planted.
To have maybe a closing question on the cooked food. I had been following before my raw food journey quite a bit Dr. Greger. I think he's doing some good job, but also, he talks about some products, like even some fruits, like tomato is a fruit actually, that can have better bioavailability when cooked. How do you feel about that?
I don't have, it's not about how I feel. The science says, okay, as the expression goes, that hundreds of thousands of nutrients are damaged, deranged, or outright destroyed when we heat them. Some nutrients in some foods become more bioavailable, even though many of those same nutrients were damaged, deranged, and destroyed. So you can have better bioavailability, but there's less to start from, the access pool. So if you can only access 50 cents out of $1, and then I show you a way to access 90% of 10 cents, well, you still end up with less. However, even if you could end up with more does not equate to better in the world of nutrition. In the world of nutrition, in the world of blood work, you don't want more, the highest possible reading on anything. We want to be in range. What we were discussing was that the ranges are incorrect for certain nutrients or for certain standards. White blood cell count, this number is incorrect. And it's obviously incorrect simply because the range is so huge. The range of 3 to 18 million. Could you imagine if your heart rate was anywhere from 60 to 600? Right? Like this, it doesn't work to go 3 to 18 million. The 3 million number was the accurate number. Boom, point blank. Plus or minus 5% is a common range that we would use. To say 6 times is still normal. This is a phenomenon known as the white tide, and it follows every cooked meal. For me, I am challenged to understand how to ignore, or that people can ignore, what I would call the elephant in the room. The fact of raw food existing nullifies our need for cooked food. Yes, we can come up with all kinds of justifications for cooked food, as long as we ignore mutagens, carcinogens, tremerogens, teratogens, carcinogens. Oh, if we ignore all that, then yes, you could get a little tiny bit more of a substance while we destroy 99.999% 99% of all the other nutrients. But this 0.0001, we could get a little more of that. When we live in a world where more isn't even better, I don't want more. I want the correct amount. I want shoes that fit my feet. I don't want bigger shoes. I want the correct amount of vitamin C. I don't want the highest source. Only, always. It doesn't equate to better. We have been sold, and this was something that you alluded to earlier as well, and I agree, that when we look at nutrition from the individual nutrient, this is a smoke screen. This is a smoke screen. It's understanding nutrition is very, very simple. Just tell me what food you eat. If it's fruits and vegetables, you're on the road to health. If your diet consists of anything other than fruits and vegetables, you're on some other road. We won't necessarily name that road, but it's not the road to health. It's the other road. And we've known this since we were children, that fruits and vegetables are good for you. I was told in grammar school, I was told in high school, I was taught in college, I was taught in medical school, fruits and vegetables are good for you. Yes, I learned all the ways and all the factors and all the micro and the 500,000 nutrients. And all I really need to know is your diet mostly fruits and vegetables? Or is it 100% fruits and vegetables? Or fruits and vegetables play a very small part in your diet? How much more do we need to know? Do you include physical activity? I talk to people who say, no, I have no physical activity in my life. Well, I know there's a problem. It's an easy problem to solve. How much fruit and vegetable do you eat? It's an easy problem. The whole idea of saying, well, I need to do a nutritional assay and we need to look at every single nutrient, 500,000 different nutrients. Who's going to do that? And who's going to create that balance? Only your body can do this. No human being can come up with the right proportions and create the symphony of 500,000 different players. Can't be done. Whereas our body does it perfectly with no conscious thought on our part. It's pretty magnificent.
Yeah, I hear you on this. And
so we'll close it. When I look at the fitness parameters, and I say, okay, what can you do? When I look at the health parameters and say, okay, let's look at how a person thinks, how they feel. That to me, as these, how is your lifestyle? What road are you on? Then health is the natural outcome, as is longevity. So the answer to longevity is live well. We know that there are exceptions of people who have lived 100 years and smoked cigarettes since they were 12. But they're the exception. The average smoker lives shorter, less time than the average person. The average person lives less time than the average vegetarian. The average vegetarian lives a shorter life than the average vegan. The numbers aren't in yet for raw food vegans, but the indicators are that the average raw food vegan will outlive the average cooked food vegan every single time.
So I believe in 50 years, when we do another Blue Zone documentary, there will be by then raw vegan Blue Zones, and they'll become the new best performance.
I certainly hope so. I certainly would expect so. My vision is raw food vegan, low fat, 80-10-10 will become normal in the world. Like non-smoking has become normal in many parts of the world. There are pockets of people taking better care of themselves. Yes, there's pockets of people taking worse care of themselves, but there's pockets taking better. It's interesting, this whole Blue Zone thing. In 80-10-10, I researched them and talk about the research. And in every one of the Blue Zones, although none of them specifically said, oh yes, 80-10-10, low fat, raw vegan. They did not say that. But if you look at their diet, no matter what they eat, and each of the blue zone areas uses a somewhat different diet, when we do a nutritional assay and say, okay, let me look at the calories, it comes back 80-10-10 or so close to it, 75-10-15, something like this. The protein intake is always right about 10%. The fat intake is always below 20, always. And the carbohydrate intake is always very high, certainly above 70 and beyond. So that one thing, at least so far, has been, in my view, the overriding blue zone commonality. Yes, they tend to live in isolated places. Yes, they tend to live in places where there's altitude available so that they can work hard. There's hard work involved. There's a physical life involved every single time. But these are just aspects of healthful living that we've always known and respected. It's why there's so many gyms opening up, because life has become extremely sedentary, and we actually need to be active in some way if we're not active as our lifestyle.
Amazing. And yeah, thank you so much. It's been really good conversation, and I've been loving having like coming with those questions that you can answer. And I remember before we shot, you actually said you were playing with the idea of having a podcast. So I'd love to switch gear now a little bit for the end of the episode and ask you about what's next. But as a parenthesis for the viewers, also, I'm doing podcast coaching now.
Yes.
And I'm really passionate about helping conscious leaders or role leaders start their podcast. And I'd love to have a conversation with you also on it, because I don't know if it's what you want to create, and we could see that, but I could totally see you having some solo episodes, but also conversation with people like Dr. Greger or I don't know, Dr. Moss or other people where I feel would be, I just really like those conversations. I know on my podcast, when I've had conversation with more than one guest, usually a lot of people like it because we can confront ideas too.
Yes.
But yeah, anyway, for the viewers, if you're interested in starting your podcast, I'll put a link in the description, and we can have a talk about it.
I had a different vision than this, and I certainly respect the input for where I would go. I'm far more interested in promoting what I'm in favor of than I am in pointing out the errors of other people. And so I think of a podcast as a way of supporting people who are thriving on the 80-10-10 lifestyle approach, and highlighting the now dozens and eventually hundreds of people that I've trained, and who are now considered many of the foremost leaders in the raw food movement. Certainly not all of them, but a great many of them have been through my training programs, which, as you say, this is a passion for me, is now training other people to become 80-10-10 coaches. So I have that coaching program, and I want to use the podcast as a way of fostering that coaching program. But you are 100% correct. I would say you're 100% correct. I have access, which is a lovely thing, to all of those other leaders in the vegan movement and other people with other dietary ideas.
Maybe even like Paul Saladino.
Yes,
different profiles.
But having two or three, or having some panels on with and getting their viewpoints. While I think they'd be well aware that they were stepping into the lion's den. And being confrontational isn't really my way.
Yeah.
Yet it would be a challenge for people to support. I don't want. Okay, so to just give them more opportunity to promote what they have to say can't possibly be what I'm going after.
Yeah.
It was asking them to answer some questions about, you know, what I would call hard questions, like,
Yeah.
how do they rationalize ignoring gens,
Yeah.
or things of this sort.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's always that balance. Like, doesn't have to be confrontational. It can come with curiosity, but then, yeah, ideally, if you believe in what you're doing, you can have those conversations, feeling that truth must prevail, and that actually will probably go in that direction.
So we have this issue about being humans. Is we have the ideas, the information, and then the fact that we are also human beings having to live our own lifestyles. So I'll talk to people philosophically about health creation, and philosophically they can easily agree. When it comes to applying that into their own, to engender that and take it on board, now it's, oh well, that's another thing, which is why when I first talked, we said responsibility. What I'm talking about is a lifestyle that is rich with personal responsibility. To take what we know and coincide this, align this with the way we live, so as to take out all contradictions. If there are contradictions, or when contradictions exist between what I know and how I live, I'm being incongruent, and this is unacceptable. This is irresponsible. So for me, the responsibility was to go down the healthiest path I could possibly imagine. No other path made sense. And I'm thrilled with the results so far. I'll let you know how they go in another 100 years or so. If it worked for my longevity.
We can do a check-in every 10 years.
I can say, and I point out to people, Pam Bodler winning a sprint event at age 45. Like the second place was a 23-year-old, and third place was younger still. It's totally sprint event. She had a decade of 80-10-10 raw vegan behind her, and beat all the kids. At 45, I mean, it was totally unexpected for her to be in the running at all. And it turned out that year, had she competed against the men, this is U.S. Men National Championships, I believe she would have placed fourth amongst all the men in the United States. But so she won the women hands down at age 45. Something's going on with 80-10-10 and longevity. I'm just not making claims yet. But we're seeing performance. I'm watching Grant Campbell and Harriet Kerr running ultra marathons at record-breaking pace. Grant's already over 50. Harriet's just about to turn 50. It's like, wow, the athletic career should have ended already, and instead they're still going strong with Grant has almost 2 decades of 80-10-10. Harriet has a full decade. And we see that going on and go, wow, something, you can stick your head in the sand and ignore this information, but I'm seeing it happen. Fantastic number of high-level performances happening amongst 80-10-10 raw vegan, that it's a good indicator that the future is going to be going to be good for those people who take fantastic care of themselves.
Yeah, amazing. Thanks, Doug. We're going to touch on the end of this episode. I'm really glad about this conversation. It was really insightful, and I love that you know so much. Thanks also to your cognitive capabilities, thanks to the raw foods also, but also, as mentioned, that you're practicing that, and that you can not only be a teacher of it, but also an example, right? A living example that paves the way for it. So we can actually have closing thoughts on this. It's like that level of leadership that you have in. So you've done that book, the 80-10-10, and you've coached many people, and you're living the life. So I know for you, that leadership is really important. That legacy, what you're building, the responsibility you talked about. Maybe we can close about like what's next for you in the grand vision of your achievement and legacy.
Well, I continue writing. I continue creating programs. I love coaching. I still love coaching and dedicate time every day for individual coaching clients with whom I work, or anybody who wants to be a high achiever, or regain health, or be a high level performer. People who want to be their best. I love that coaching side of things. And that includes training coaches. So for me, the big responsibility over the coming years is training coaches. For people interested in, I have a coaching program, 80-10-10, certifying coaches. It's a program I took very seriously. I know there are many raw food coaching programs. Most of them are quick and easy, and I'll just say quick and easy. I wanted to create something unique, so I coupled with two other people. I teach the information, essentially, what to coach others. But my wife Rosalind has taught teachers how to teach on a national level throughout the United Kingdom for several decades, and took that over and sort of added that to a program within 80-10-10 coach program. Okay, how to coach rather than what to coach. And then we coupled with Ted Carr as the third part of the triangle that created strength, and his aspects on marketing and how to create a practice, how to generate clients while you're asleep, basically, what to do in order to build an endless string of clients. And my experience was, I went through medical training. One of the things that came up was the fact that half the people who graduate medical school, law school, dental school, all of these types of practices never go into the field of medicine or law at all. They never go into practice. Half never do it. And as I started people, if I look at the number of people who are trained as massage therapists and how many of them are actually doing massage, the percentage is really low. Most people are trained in massage therapy and they don't have a practice. And the great percentage of people in many fields got trained and then have no practice. So for me, if I was going to train coaches as 80-10-10 coaches, and they have so much passion to do this and bring it to people, I wanted them to be able to have successful practice right out the door. And we're seeing that happen with coaches already. We've got graduates who are making their mark. It's fun to see that they're being super successful because they have all three key elements: what to teach, how to teach, and how to build the practice.
Yeah, I love that. And we can put links in the description of the video also. I've had Ted Carr on the podcast more on the building muscle on fruits. Yes. And then we had the podcast also with you, him, and Shane Sterling. So people can look into this on building muscle on fruits, which was really cool. I'd love to have Ted now that he's switched gear more in the business world also, and spending time with Alex Hormozy and Sam Ovens with the school communities, to have him again on the podcast more on the business front. So
it would
Ted,
be beneficial.
If you're watching this, join for another
come back,
episode
Ted, for another
in
episode.
Bali if possible. But yeah, it's also the viewers can look into that if they want. So thank you so much, Doug. It's been such a pleasure to have you here in Bali overall, and you have your retreat starting soon too. So yeah, I hope you enjoy, and thank you so much for sitting down with me. Do you have a last word for our viewer?
Actually, I would repeat the last words. For me, I love coaching, and helping people improve themselves is a passion for me. Teaching others how to coach successfully, I think that's going to be the legacy that I will leave behind. Is I'm still looking for the correct number. I've heard different numbers have been thrown around. I think the number is 100,000. With 100,000 80-10-10 coaches, we basically this would be the 100th monkey that would change the world to raw vegan.
Maybe 144,000.
I've heard this number thrown around. Some people have said 144,000. It's some magic number. Some people have told me 10,000 is enough. Okay. 10,000 80-10-10 coaches will change the world.
Okay.
But I'm looking for those people who love coaching enough that they want to be taught how to succeed.
Amazing.
How to succeed as a coach.
Amazing. Let's do it. And if the viewer wants to help, if you enjoyed this episode, you can like, comment, and share. So we already start having more distribution with this. And also, we love to make it interactive. We'd love to hear from you. What is your main takeaway from this episode? You can post in the comments of the YouTube video. Thank you so much for spending your time with us. And thank you so much, Doug.
Thank you for the opportunity. I really do appreciate that a lot.